Good Erev Shabbos, and welcome to Behaalotecha Torah's virtual Shabbat Drasha. I can't complain, I really can't, about people who say they can't complain. In speaking with many people over these last few months of pandemic and confinement, when I ask people how they're doing, so many people have said, I can't complain. I appreciate the restraint and the self-control. I want to acknowledge that. And since our Parsha this week contains quite a bit of insight into complaining, what it's really about, why we do it, maybe let's spend a few minutes just examining the nature of complaining and why we can or why we can't, why we should or why we shouldn't, and what it might tell us about ourselves and the way we look at the world. Complaining takes center stage towards the end of our Parsha. We're finishing a multi-chapter preamble to the book of Numbers, which is really called Bamidbar, in the wilderness or the desert, because that's where we are, and that's where we continue to become what we are. In the wilderness, having left Egypt behind, as the saying goes, we now witness the Jews faced with taking Egypt out of themselves. It's not easy. People forget things about the past. That's a truism of human existence. That's just the way it goes. I try to fight against this, probably by buying books and even reading some of them once in a while. I want to keep my memory sharp, and I want things to be remembered. But I forget things just like everybody else. My sister and I spent some time recently on our dad's yahrzeit remembering things he had said or liked to do and some things about the house we grew up in. There were a lot of things we both remembered and many things that one or the other of us remembered. And the other one said, oh, that's right, I forgot about that. And there were some things that neither of us could remember. So our parents are gone, and our kids never saw some of those things, so that means those things are gone. But what really got my attention in the last 15 or 20 years was seeing people marching and protesting in Russia and carrying old communist banners and even images of former dictators of the USSR. They were nostalgic, I get it. They were nostalgic for the good old days when everyone had a job, everyone had a roof over their heads, even if they shared 2 rooms with 3 families. Everyone had the same insufficient amount of food to eat, and everyone knew that they would not be ignored by the state in their old age. Of course, they forgot a few things, like arrests in the middle of the night, famine, show trials, the gulag, the secret police spying on everyone, and also the fact that they were trapped and unable to leave Mother Russia. I think about what those people forgot when I read these parshas about us, when we started to forget about what Mitzrayim, what Egypt was really like. We were slaves in Egypt. We worked for hundreds of years at back-breaking labor. No vacation, no pension. We worked until we dropped dead. No hope, no promise of liberation. And then barely able to cry out because of shortness of breath and probably silicosis. We did manage to groan in our suffering and cry out in a plea to God to save us, which He did, we should note. And He took us out of Egypt and gave us the Torah. And not that we're complaining, but it has 613 mitzvahs that we had to follow, some in the desert, and all of them once we got into Israel and settled it. We were given a beautiful land flowing with milk and honey, so we really couldn't complain. But we not only had to work it now, we also had to leave the corners of our field for poor people. We had to take tithes from our crops and produce for the Levites who were working in the temple in Jerusalem. And all this was only for 6 out of every 7 years that we were allowed to exert ourselves by toiling in the fields. Once every 7 years, we weren't even allowed to farm. We had to leave the land to have its sabbatical. And we had to hope and trust that food came from somewhere else. Not that we're complaining. Even before we got to this state of being in the land, we were in fact doing a good bit of complaining. The first complaints in this parsha had to do with food. Maybe not a big surprise if you've ever spent any time with the Jewish people or any subset thereof. You remember the ancient joke, which could certainly apply to Bnei Yisrael in this parsha. What was it like in the desert? The food was terrible and the portions were so small. I remember a time once when there was a march for solidarity with Soviet Jews organized in Boston. It was supposed to go from the State House through Boston Common, maybe up Commonwealth Avenue. But somebody had set up a table with cakes and cookies and tea and coffee at the exit to the Common. So when everyone got there, the march just broke up. It disbanded. Everyone took cookies and cakes and started schmoozing. The march was over. We do like our noshing, no question about it. I have one more joke about this. Not 100% comfortable putting it on the internet. Talk to me at the Kiddush. The flip side of this, as a wise rabbi once told me very simply, is you talk about what you need. So maybe food was a real need for us, a real concern, because we've always been talking about it. That's called food insecurity, by the way, and it doesn't go away. And it's something that we should pay more attention to in the world around us, because our well-stocked kitchens and pantries put us in a tiny minority of the world's population. I heard that once at a wedding, the waiters were clearing up the tables, taking away the plates and everything, and one waiter took away the bread basket. So a woman who was a survivor was sitting at the table. She stopped him. She said, "Please leave the bread on the table. You have no idea how comforting it is for me to see a full basket of bread on the table." So there we were in the desert, free above all else, having been given the Torah. So now we had a moral compass, and knowing that we were on the way to Israel. We had a destination. We had a purpose. Now who could complain? The Jews, that's who. So it says, Vayhi ha'am ki misonanim, the Torah says. The people were like complainers. To figure out exactly what that means, maybe they weren't really voicing the real complaint, so they complained about other things. That's how Akedas Yitzchak, Reb Moshe Arama, learns it. And we'll come back to him in a minute. What was the complaint, at least on the face of it? About the food. Mi yachilenu basar. Who's going to give us meat to eat, we asked. And then it continues in a little bit of a non sequitur. The Torah says, Zacharnu es hadaga asher nochal b'mitzrayim chinam. We remember the fish that we ate in Israel for free. Esa kishuyim, v'esa avatichim, v'esa chatzir, v'esa batzalim, v'esa ashumim, cucumbers, watermelons, leek, garlic, onions, a whole salad bar we had going there. And ve'yizmir, all there is now is manna. Remember that miraculous food that came from heaven every day that tasted like whatever you wanted it to taste like? So if you wanted it to taste like watermelon, maybe it would. Some say yes, some say not. But back up a step. You miss the onions and the leeks and the cucumber salad, and of course, the herring, everybody. But who said anything about meat? This is the famous flesh pots of Egypt. Remember, it was their beef stew that we were envious of. We longed for. Not that we ever had it. We were the slaves. We lived on matzah, if you call that living. Maybe a cucumber, a watermelon here or there, but where do we get this idea of meat? Number one. And number two, what's free in cup? Who said anything about free? We worked like slaves, because slaves is what we were. It was hardly free. So what's going on here? So remember that Akedas Yitzchak said, we were kemis onanim. The people were like complainers. In fact, in that they complained about something, but not actually the thing that was really bothering us. What was really bothering us? Chinam, it seemed. That chinam, it was for free. Not that we didn't have to work for it, because we did. We worked, we labored as slaves there. And they fed us so that we could keep working. But here, where the food is also free, now we're not so free. You know, we never translate the second half of that verse, that great verse, let my people go. Shlach haza'ami. But what's the rest of it? V'ya'avduni ala harazeh. God says, let my people go so that they can serve me on the mountain, on Mount Sinai. Now we're really servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, servants of Hashem, with hundreds of mitzvahs to do. And meat, we have to slaughter it properly. You have to salt it to get the blood out that we're not allowed to eat. You have to remove the sciatic nerve we're not allowed to eat. You have to cook it separate from our dairy dishes. Why can't we just enjoy a good shawarma without all these worries? Is it galad? Do I have to wash and make hamotzi on the lafa? Maybe I'll just have the platter. Then I can't have milk. I can't have frozen yogurt for 6 hours. All these worries. So the chinam, it seems to be, is why can't we just live chinam for free? With no strings attached? Why do you have to have all these restrictions, all these limitations? Some of the commentators see the frequency in this passage of the word ta'ava, the word for desire. And they say that desire, the desire that we had, what we were really desiring is something even more fleshly than flesh. Either let us be the kind of libertines that we saw back there in Egypt, doing whatever we want, or maybe let us eat a lot of meat so that we can chase after those desires of the body. Of course, we're allowed to have intimate relations, but only within a marriage. You have to have chuppah, kiddush, and ketubah, all that responsibility. Why can't we just have a good time, live and let live, chinam? So to those many people in our world who are forever asking these questions, isn't it just enough to be a good person? Why are there so many do's and don'ts? Why can't we just promise to be good people, not hurt anyone? We answer that with the old parable of the deep-sea diver. Diver wants to go exploring in the ocean, so they sell him an expensive diving suit with a hose and with a helmet and pressure gauges and fitted gloves and boots, and now he has to hire a boat to take him out and make sure there's enough ample supply of oxygen to sustain him there. So he finally goes, he's out, he's diving, and who does he meet there in the middle of the water but another guy, dressed in a suit and tie, wingtips, carrying a briefcase, also in the water. No helmet, no gloves, no hose, no nothing. So the diver says to him, "What's going on? How is it that I need all this heavy gear that's weighting me down? Excuse me. They told me I needed a helmet and a suit and a hose and all this, but look at you. You're here with no equipment at all." So the guy in the suit and the briefcase says to the diver, "Chacham, genius, you're diving. I'm drowning." We could complain if we were to forget the burdens that we carried as slaves. We could complain if we forgot God's choosing us out of desire and love to be His eternal people. We could complain if we were to forget the tremendous privilege and merit that we have as the Jewish people to make the world a godly place by our living example more than anything else. We wouldn't see Torah and mitzvahs as such a burden, a weight, set of obligations holding us back from what we want to do. We'd recognize that it's through living a full Jewish life that we're able to be all that we can be, a holy nation and a light unto the nations. But let's take it one step even further. Where does this urge to complain come from, deep within us? The Parsha itself this week dedicates a good couple of aliyahs to document and describe the contours and the depths of the people's complaining. Is it just to teach us a lesson? Keep quiet, don't complain so much? Has to be something more. So the truth of the matter is, we can complain. We can complain, and we should complain sometimes. Of course, it shouldn't end with complaining, because the solution, or at least a share of the solution, is in our hands. It's within our grasp. We can complain, and we do complain, because we know with absolute certainty, with perfect faith, deep down in the core of our being, that things can get better. Things can be better. The world as it is, quite obviously, is not perfect. In fact, it's rather far away from perfect. Sometimes it seems like it's even slipping backwards. So we know that this is not as good as it gets, or as one wise guy put it, a Jew is someone who never takes yes for an answer. We never take, yes, this is as good as it gets, sorry, because we know it can be better. So complaining should be the first step to making it better. All right, the second step. First step is maybe identifying the problem. Then you articulate it, which sometimes might sound to the untrained ear like complaining, kvetching. What it really is our assessment of the problem, and as we all know, diagnosis is a major step on the way to a cure. If we can identify the problem, we're already on our way to making it better. The vision of the world that the Jewish people have from our earliest origins is of justice, coexistence, safety, and security for all, and peace for all. As long as we're not there yet, and you can see from the news that we are not there yet, we keep complaining, and from there we keep planning and doing and reevaluating and working harder to bring the world in line with the moral and ethical and spiritual vision that's our banner expressed in Hashem's Torah. So you don't need to say, I can't complain any longer. Complain gesundheit. And at the same time, propose some solutions, or at least how we could address the problem. That'll get us far, and it'll certainly be contagious in a good sense. Hopefully, our optimism and our certainty that we can have a share in improving the world will inspire others to join in the effort, and we'll all keep moving forward to the promised land. In fact, to make all of human existence into a promised land of redemption and fulfillment, and ultimately peace. Good Shabbos.